Hi, I'm JinJin, and I am the author of this chapbook called There Is Still Singing in the Afterlife. It came out last November from Radix Media, and I'm currently in my home in Shanghai, in my childhood bedroom actually, and this is a little wasp nest behind me on the window, which I wrote a poem about last year called The Mother. So it feels really appropriate to be talking about the kind of achieving my childhood dream, to have my very own poetry collection. I've been working on this collection for maybe the past 2 years, and really grateful for the great team at Radix for making such a beautiful product that I honestly didn't even know how to dream about. So the cover is printed on a beautiful letterpress print, so you can really feel the texture. There's a kind of weight to the book that I really love. It's a chapbook, which means it's kind of a debut smaller poetry collection. I think of it as kind of a poet's first hello to the world, a place to really like experiment and figure out what I'm trying to say. The back has some blurbs and it won the Own Voices Chapbook Prize, which Radix is hosting every year, and this is their first year hosting it, and it was judged by Aria Aber. And I guess I would describe this book as an attempt to speak about memories and histories, and just trying to speak in a forbidden language, misremembered and censored and remembered, trying to reach into memory that is somewhat blurry and forbidden, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and trying to learn how to speak about things that through memory's murkiness, both historical and personal memory, and memories shared between friends and lovers and strangers. And I'm always thinking about this question from Bogin in her book, The Vertical Interrogation of Strangers. It's one of my anchors. I carry it everywhere, and in the beginning she has these 12 questions, one of which is, what would you say if you could? And that question drives a lot of what I write. And by the way, there's calligraphy on the front, which is a Chinese translation. 来世人有歌声, so there is still singing in the afterlife. I'll just open it to show you some of the textual and imagistic interplay that I experiment with in this collection. There's a really beautiful transparent page, and this is my signature. There's a page of blurbs by really just my inspirational poets, Terence Hayes, Sally Wimau, Aria Aber, Matt Rohr, who I admire so much, and it's just always surprising to me that people are seeing me in such a way and seeing my work. The poems are written for my mother and for April and her brother, who her brother passed away a few years ago, and a lot of these poems are my attempts to speak to not only to him who is no longer here with us physically on this earth, but to his sister who I have become closer to throughout the years after his death, and really trying to understand what kind of memories I can pass on to her about him, and the responsibilities and slipperiness and impossibility of conveying such memories. The epigraph is from a Chinese classic called Dream of the Red Chamber, which the second volume of which I have here, and it really is the most fascinating book that seems to be about a social history of a family's rise and fall, but it really is also a Buddhist mantra that is teaching us how to transcend the earthly plane of our lives, which some call red dust, which is also a recurring motif in here that I guess I'm just obsessed with. The opening poem is called There They Are. It, I guess you can see how it kind of plays with how the text appears on the page. It's really inspired by Sharon Olds and Richard Seiken. Just, of course, how could you not be? And because I'm also a filmmaker, so I do think of it as a cinematic opening way of bringing the reader into my world. The second poem is perhaps even more of an embodied way of that opens at night. It's called Night People, and I think of it as a window to pull you in, maybe. This is the first section of To Red Dust that I mentioned, and there's some interplay between Chinese and English, which I'm constantly thinking about, wrestling with really how to write in a language most natural to me without over explaining myself, without choosing to speak in either Chinese or English, because for me it's one language. I exist in that space in between, and how do I have the page manifest and embody this very intertwined and inseparable relationship? So part of, especially for ideas like red dust, which I mentioned, is kind of this earthly feeling of being alive, the stickiness of not yet having transcended, and how do I explain this like almost unexplainable concept in these poems? Not explain, but like have it be a part of without over explaining it. In this poem, showing my mother a censored film she cannot unsee in 3 acts. The poem is in 3 acts, and I wrote it based on this documentary film called In Search of Ling Zhao's Soul by the filmmaker Hu Jie. And there are 3 screenshots or stills from the film that I include, which just moved me so terribly, where she was a poet as well. She was jailed for like revolutionary speech, and she ended up writing poems in her own blood on her prison uniform every day, like thousands of words every day. So the screenshots say, sometimes I was so dizzy because I wrote at least 1,000 words a day in my own blood. The next poem is an erasure of Chairman Mao's Little Red Book, which is a really complicated book. I think it's propaganda, but also is deeply fascinating that it really inspired the Black Panthers in the US. It became like a pretty foundational text at the time. It was used to fundraise for them, but it was also used to ignite the Cultural Revolution. So it's really complicated, but I play with the language is also really alive and interesting, in that Mao was also a poet. And what does it mean when a lot of dictators are also attracted to poetry and language and are able to use language in such a way? The second to last poem is called Against This Earth We Knock, which is the title poem to the next manuscript I'm working on. And then there's a title poem there, Still Seeing in the Afterlife, which is the last poem. Some notes, acknowledgements, me. The next titles in the series, I'm really excited about Genwa's Bint, which is the other chapbook that won this prize. That's coming out in March. And then here's the nice thick page that ends the book. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you love all that Radix does. I am always inspired by their mission and their work ethic. Bye!